Hi there. Welcome to The Preventable, the podcast giving you a seat at the table with conversations about the intersection of alcohol, drugs, and mental health in everyday lives. Take a seat and join us.
Welcome to The Preventable. Today with me is an esteemed guest, somebody who I've basically had to force into it. I've basically had to bribe her. Leah Brock is with me today. And Leah is one of the, what could we even say? Institutions, tenants of the National Council of Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, which is what our national organization used to be and is experiencing a resurgence. So welcome, Leah.
Thank you, Nicole.
So really, how much did I have to bribe you to be here today?
Well, I'm planning my trip to Europe.
So, Leah, you are in New York, right? Manhattan?
Yes.
And so right now you are retired and living your best life, seeing Broadway shows and doing all of the things. But before you were retired, you worked at NCADD for a long time. How long did you work there?
Over 33 years.
And what was your official title? I mean, because I just knew you as Leah, and everyone, as I was coming up through the organization, people would talk about you and say, oh, you need to meet Leah. You need to go to the conference. You need to meet Leah. What was your official title?
I think the last one was Director of Affiliate Relations.
And basically,
it was a variation on that for most of the time.
So they brought you in. So let's take a step back, because I think some people might not fully know about NCADD, which is an organization that was founded a long time ago by Marty Mann, correct?
Correct.
So can you talk a little bit about NCADD and Marty Mann? Who was she?
Well, Marty Mann is a woman who was one of the first women to get sobriety through AA. And she recognized in about 1944, recognized that AA had limits on what it could advocate for. It can't advocate what it can say in terms of recovery and the program, and felt that there needed to be an organization similar to what the time was the National Tuberculosis Association, American Heart Association, other disease-driven organizations that provided the public with education, with advocacy. And she felt that alcoholism, it was limited to alcoholism at the time, needed to have such a voice. So
you just said a lot. Let's unpack this here, okay? First of all, 1940s, she's a woman who's in recovery or, finding sobriety. She's working a program. I mean, that in and of itself is a pretty big deal, right? To be a pioneer in that way. But then she also recognized that addiction or alcoholism was a disease that should be treated just like TB or diabetes or things like that. I mean, those two things together make her like a pretty big friggin' deal.
very big deal. Yes. And probably the biggest was the fact that she was a woman.
Right. And her sponsor was Bill W., right?
Yes.
Which, if people are listening and don't know, was one of the founders of AA. And so, I mean, it's incredible to me that she did all of this stuff, had the gumption and the gall to be not anonymous about her sobriety and to say, this program works and we need to do some other things. So, I don't know, let me just create this national organization. That's pretty cool.
It sure is.
Yeah. And what's funny to me is, so right before we got on this call, Leah, I actually was onboarding 2 new staff. And part of the onboarding is to tell them about our history. And of course, our history at Prevent+Ed starts way before 1965 when we became an affiliate. Our history really starts with Marty Mann. And we became, I think it was the 77th affiliate of the national organization. And at its height, I mean, there were like 300 affiliates all across the country. Is that right?
That was before my time, but
okay.
There were close to 200, I think, when I joined the staff.
And your job was really just to liaise with all of the affiliate directors, make sure that they were connecting, and you put on a national conference and things like that, right?
For the most part, yes, that's right.
The EAP movement came out of the national organization, correct?
The EAP movement did. The foundation for what's now the American Society of Addiction Medicine, the National Nurses, forgotten the precise title, but the Nursing Organization in Addiction. They grew out of NCA, what at the time was NCA.
Because it was the National Council on Alcoholism.
Yes.
Right. And then the name changed, added more letters.
In 1990, yes, to add drug dependence and to expand the mission to include other drugs.
Because we know that alcohol is a drug, but to include other drugs for sure. And I think that, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like the national organization is still one of the very few that really places a lot of emphasis on alcohol being a drug.
I think that's true. And for that reason, I think that there was always the sense that that was important to do, because other drugs had so consumed the public's anxiety, concern, and monies were going primarily to other drugs. But alcoholism was, I assume it still is, the number one drug.
Right. So how did you find this job? I mean, 30-some years ago.
I answered a blind ad in the newspaper.
What did the ad say? What did it say?
It said national organization looking for person to work with membership or something. It was rather vague. But I had left a previous job and had been doing some family business work and decided I wanted to get back into an employment situation rather than a family business situation. So I answered this ad among some others, and I went for the job interview and was interviewed by five staff members. It was a group interview. I'd never had that before.
And you killed it, and the rest is history, huh?
And the rest is history.
So how did your... Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go.
I learned. I was not familiar with the organization. Like most people, I had encountered what I thought was too much drinking by friends or family members, but I didn't have any clinical knowledge or anything about the disease itself. But I learned soon that the values of the organization matched what I consider my values. I loved every day of my job. I did.
It seemed like you did. Like you're one of those people who that people like being around. And I know you're also very humble, but when I had the privilege of attending my first affiliate conference as director of prevention, it was basically to see if we wanted to keep being an affiliate, right? Because we paid dues. And Howard, the executive director at the time, was like, does it make sense for us to do this anymore? He had gone to some conferences and those just really weren't his deal. So he was like, well, why don't you go? So I went, and I didn't know a whole lot, but I knew that you were the person who would help me figure it out. Like, who would help me navigate the relationships, figure out who I needed to talk to, where I needed to sit. I remember even when we were getting ready to go to the Capitol, I was sitting next to you and you knew everyone's name, which relationships are like they're the essential piece, right? And people like to know, they like when you know their name, and they like when you know a little bit about them as a human being. And they like when you can talk about the restaurant that's next to the city, that's next to the whatever. And you're a master at relationships. Have you always been, or is it like a muscle that you've worked over time? You know what I mean? Like, there are some people who can walk in and like they can work a room. And there are other people that it's hard for them to build those connections. Has it always been easy for you, or is it easy now?
Well, right now, of course, things are a lot different, but I never felt that I could walk in and work a room ever. But I
did it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know. We'll erase this little segment.
No, we're not gonna. I mean, seriously, like when you were a young person, was building relationships easy for you? Like, do you always, like, are you, because it's like you never forget like a face and a name. Like, that's a gift. A lot of people don't have that.
Well, I don't think that's something you learn. Somehow, maybe I do have it. I'm not so keenly aware that I have it, but
that's what makes you good.
I'll accept
yeah,
that.
That's what makes you good, is like you're not super aware that you have it. So what was your favorite part of the job? I'm sure it morphed over time, right? The job in and of itself,
meeting the people and working with the people in the office, but among the affiliates, because I learned so much about the disease just by seeing how people acted, related to people, how the knowledge base. I've learned early on that the affiliate staff, the executive directors, were grossly underrated. I don't think people appreciated the amount of knowledge they had, what kind of work they were doing, how much sacrifice they were making in their own lives to do the work. A good many of the affiliate executive directors when I first joined were people who had come to the job through their own recovery. That's changed. I think that to some extent it has become more professionalized because people are going into it as a career choice, maybe instead of, happenstance.
Yep.
But the path would never have been created had it not been for the people who really forged it 30 years ago, for example. And I remember my first business trip when I joined the staff. The man who was the president said, "We're going to go around. We're going to do a few seminars to introduce you to people." And my first one was in Kansas City.
Okay.
And Ed Tash, Howard's predecessor, was there.
Yes.
And of course, and Jim Eads, who was longtime executive director in Kansas City. And I felt overwhelmed by the knowledge that those two people had, and welcomed. I mean, they were so welcoming and willing to forgive anything I didn't know, which became very evident early on because I didn't know anything. So I credit a lot of what I learned at that meeting and through those two particularly.
Yeah, I had the privilege of working under Ed for probably 5 years, I would say. Yep. When it was all told, because I was a boomerang. So I left and came back. And, I had the privilege of working under Ed, but also under Dan Duncan, as well as Harriet Coppola, who the three of them, had each worked here almost, some 30, some more than 30. And I think what I appreciate about you, Leah, in particular, is that, in this job as an executive director, there's a balance, right? A balance between being innovative and staying fresh and meeting needs, but also being respecting tradition and understanding the roots and the why. Maybe not the why so that you can always do things the same exact way, but at least understanding why it was and where it came from. And I think that is something that you and that the national organization has helped me do, is to not only look with an eye on the future, but also help understand where we came from and why we are where we are. Because when I sit with new staff and I talk to them about the fact that, we became an affiliate in the 60s, and in the 70s we struggled and we almost went bankrupt. And then we, and we were in EAP and we're never going to do treatment. It helps if I have a grounding. And I feel like that's what the national organization, one of the things is that it's helped me understand the why. Does that make sense?
It does. And, to quote a famous, I'm not sure who, but things must change for things to remain the same.
Right.
And I think that there's good reason for why organizations that swore they'd never do treatment now have to do treatment. There's good reason for understanding the basis for prevention, which is a hard road. I mean, people don't understand it. Funding for it isn't what it is for something that has a more immediate outcome. So, and I think that NCA and NCADD were helpful in having the public understand the importance of prevention, of education. That those were the roots of the founding organization, and those really have to remain at least part of the roots of any existing organization, in my mind.
And I think that's right, because as the national organization evolved and continues to evolve, you have been one of the voices. There have been others, certainly, like Mike in California, Mike Ballou, who have really said, if we're going to continue to be in this space, we need to evolve in our thinking. So that might be, being more open to harm reduction. That might mean being open and specifically calling out, medication assisted treatment and things like that. And it doesn't seem controversial, but I think that when you have an organization that has such deep roots, if we don't evolve, we could get stuck, right? And could become kind of we could run ourselves out of business if we don't continue to evolve.
That's right. And then there's no place at the table, then you can't affect any change.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
it's difficult to be very strident in positions and still maintain what you think is the integrity of the organization and the value and the mission.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
you got a lot of smart people like you and others that are figuring it out, have figured it out very, very successfully.
Well, so in 2019, is that when the organization
Yes.
dissolved? Okay.
Yes.
And so the national organization dissolved in 2019. You were still working there at the time.
Yes.
So that prompted retirement for you.
Yes.
And then COVID happened.
Correct.
And for me, personally, I can only speak for Nicole. During COVID, I really leaned on some of my fellow affiliate directors from other parts of the country, other coasts, who could see what was happening with COVID before I could, because it was happening to them before it was happening in Missouri. And so I really started reaching out, and they in turn to me, and we were looking at policies. You know, I asked Julie Dostal in Oneonta for her COVID policy. She gave me one. It lasted, it said we could be out of work for 5 days. So, I mean, but we really kind of came together during that time.
Yeah.
And I think realized that there was a void in professionally being able to bounce ideas off of each other. And so we had a couple of false starts to get the gang back together, a couple of Zoom meetings, but it finally picked back up in what?
The fall of 2020? Was it?
I don't know. I was going to say 21, so I don't know. Sometime.
It may have been.
I don't know. And I remember being on some calls talking about if we should, you know, resurrect and bring up from the Phoenix, the national organization. And right. The first, at which we're doing, by the way, we're back in it. But the first question that everyone said is Leah going to be part of it? Is Leah going to run it? Is Leah going to be part of it? I think I even met you for coffee in New York City.
You did?
And was like, are you? And your answer was, no. And yet, you're not running it, but you are a part of it. And it's making it definitely sells it for some people because they trust you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm not running it. I found joy in retirement, forced as it may have been initially. Forced retirement, not forced joy.
But well, too. Maybe that too.
But I do love being involved because I treasure the relationships, friendships that I've made with this job. And it keeps me involved in that way. And I love seeing new people getting to know and understand and appreciate the value of the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes across. It really does. Like when we were in Baltimore at the Turk conference and we were talking about the newly reformed organization, you were walking through the hall and people are like, Leah, oh my gosh, Leah. Like that. Do you feel like a celebrity sometimes?
No.
Oh, come on. Really? Really?
Because two people recognize me?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yes. I mean, it has to feel nice though. Like that. I mean, I don't think this is your purpose, but
it's very heartwarming.
It must feel nice that people are linked through you.
It does. I confess it does.
Okay, good. I'll take it. I will take it.
Okay.
So with the organization, the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, we've gotten the gang back together. We've done some quarterly calls where we're featuring affiliates. We've gotten together at the Turk conference. We're thinking about doing something virtually. What is your role in all of this right now? Like, are you just kind of coming in as you want? Do you, are you making sure that we have people at the table that maybe we hadn't thought of? Or how do you view yourself in this current resurrection?
Maybe both of those things, because there are some people who I think that I was able to kind of suggest might be interested in coming aboard. And also, having spent 30 plus years at this work, it's not something that I really wanted to drop entirely. To some extent, I never really considered my work at NCADD a job. I mean, I got to be very invested personally in the organization and the mission, and I would like to kind of sneak a look to see what's being done, of which I can't do on a hands-on basis, but gives me a great deal of pleasure to hear what's being done, to see some of the newer people who are coming in, to see the new people in leadership, such as yourself. It is what, 3 years now? 5 years now. Okay. Okay.
But I still consider myself new, especially when I'm, working alongside people, like Julie and like Sharon. I know she's retired, but I mean, she was at the affiliate in Indiana for a long time.
Very long time.
Yeah. So yes. I do still feel like I'm new in this role and have a lot to learn.
You also have a lot to teach because you've really done amazing things with the affiliate. And one of the things that, kind of as an aside, St. Louis really stands out in my mind of always having had real solid leadership during my tenure, starting with Ed, Dan for a while, Howard, and now you. And good staff. Yes. Harriet, whom I knew of, but had a chance to meet when she got an award.
For Tripod, the Meritorious Award. That was awesome.
Right.
Yep.
That's right. And it's I think it's really good that people know that it's not just the two coasts.
Right.
But that there is really a lot going on in the center of the country because Sharon, for one, what was going in Kansas City, just
Waukesha,
Waukesha, Des Moines,
yep,
just so many places that just have it's rich with innovation, with excellent staff. So,
well, one thing that I appreciate about you, and this is a high compliment. You are very good at recognizing when people do something that you think is well done. Like some people just think it, but don't actually say it. And I think that that's a part of your job as, affiliate membership or affiliate network. When we did those Super Bowl commercials, I know it just meant the world to Howard when you sent a note that was like, hey, that was really well done. Or with Stacy Zellen, who is helping corral the cats, herd the cats in this new national organization Resurgence, when she does particularly well at a meeting or conducting business or, keeping Hal on task or something, you send her an email or a note. And that just means the world to people who are not in this for the accolades. They're not. I mean, you don't do this work because you're going to get an amazing paycheck or because you're going to get an award. You do this because you love it. And so when somebody notices that you ran a meeting well, or that you had a program that was really cool, or that you sent me the loveliest note when I got this job, and basically you were like, I knew it was yours. Like the first time I met you, I knew it was yours. And it just meant the world to me. And I think that you might not you might underestimate how much those kinds of things really do go, how much they build like respect and trust and that sense of camaraderie. And so when people feel that, they feel it towards you, but then also they feel it towards the national network. So it's almost like you knew what you were doing. Because yes, they're allegiant to you, but it's what you represent, right?
I would hope so, because that's the way it should be. Because people come and go in jobs. It's true, I didn't go so fast. It took 30 years. But it should be the job and the organization that survive, and not an individual.
That's the hope, right?
Yeah.
That's the hope. I'm working on that right now. Yeah. Like, how do I get my team to not just be loyal to me, so that if I go, they stay and they make it even better? Like, that's the goal. And I feel like you started with that goal in mind.
Well, I guess so. I was fortunate. I had worked previous jobs in national organizations, and I had my first exposure. I had worked in two national organizations, but my first one, I had she actually probably was my supervisor, but I saw how she acted, and I saw that she did a job that was extremely well done and well appreciated, but she always did it knowing that the membership was what drove the organization,
right?
And you cannot allow your ego to take over when it's the members that are important in in an organization. Of course, the mission, but also in terms of people. It's not the staff; it's the board and the members.
Because really, without the members, you can't execute the mission.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
What do you hope for the Phoenix that is the NCADD? What do you hope? I know you're in it, but you're not totally in it, and you're trying to provide some guidance, but you're also trying to allow us to have some space. What do you hope is in the future for the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence?
I would my hope is tempered with some expectations, and I'm not sure that we will ever see the organization in a new form the same way it had been, and I'm not sure that it should be.
Okay.
Because times change, and what we've spoken about earlier. But I would hope that NCADD, or however it's going to be known, would be able to once again take the prominence that it had in terms of advocating for alcoholism and other drugs. Because I'm not deep into it. I don't get trade papers or anything of that nature. But my sense is that alcoholism has been once again kind of shunted aside. And I worry a little bit about the consequences of legalizing marijuana. I worry a lot about that. I think that NCADD had a strong voice in kind of helping people understand the problems associated with freer use of marijuana, and I don't know that that's being done now. So I would hope that, even though that's not alcoholism as such, I would hope that there would be a voice where the history, the research, the fact-finding. NCADD used to be prominent, very prominent in issuing papers and fact sheets that were very well researched. It's a hefty job, but I would hope that we might see that happen again.
I agree, and I think I think there's a lot of others of us who would like that very same thing. So it feels like the time is right. And I think we have a lot of the right people at the table. Not everybody, right? There's a lot more voices that we can bring in, but I think what you want is what a lot of us want. And so, yeah. What's next for you? What do you have? You got some more Broadway shows? You going on a trip? You doing anything fun?
I haven't gone on any major trips. Haven't done that yet, but I do hope this fall to be able to do that. And
Ooh, where? Broadway. Anywhere fun?
I have a special affinity and ties to Italy, and I haven't been there for a while, so that may be where I'll head.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. And hopefully you'll keep coming around those meetings we have, right?
Oh, I wouldn't miss them. Okay. I wouldn't miss them.
Excellent. Was there this wasn't so bad, right?
For you. Maybe it was worse for you.
Was there anything that you thought I was going to ask you that I didn't? That you want me to ask you?
No, I was. You hadn't prepared me for anything.
I know. You made
it a lot easier than I anticipated.
Yeah. Once we figured out the tech, once Max got you hooked up, you are all good. You are all good. Seriously, Leah, I know this is very much out of your comfort zone. I know you really sort of like being the behind the scenes connector. Yes. So I know you didn't think this would be all that interesting. I guarantee you it was very interesting. People will think this is very interesting. And I think that I can speak for a lot of us all around the country that can say thank you. Thank you for not only being here today, but thank you for your dedication to the work. Thank you for your dedication to the people, because it's the people that do the work. So really just want to, on behalf of a lot of people, I would just like to publicly say thank you very much.
Well, thank you. But I'll tell you, my life was enriched by that job and by the people I've met. Truly. I got more out of it than I gave.
I get that. If you like what you heard, please consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing to The Preventable. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks for joining us at The Preventable, brought to you ad-free by Prevent+Ed. Prevent+Ed works to reduce or prevent the harms of alcohol and other drug use through education, intervention, and advocacy. Please visit their website at prevented.org. Like what you heard? Rate, review, and subscribe to stay up to date with what we are serving on The Preventable.